All right, everybody. I've got another very special guest for y'all. Everybody, please welcome to the show, Mr. Adam Tierney.
Hello.
Welcome, Adam.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
Oh, I'm really excited for this one because, A, you've done a lot of cool stuff, but B, you're working on Godzilla. And it's not often I get to talk about Godzilla with people, so we'll definitely be jumping in that. Plus, you got a bunch of other cool stuff coming out. But before we jump too far into what's current and what you're working on now, let's go through the past a little bit. Have you always loved comics? At what point did you want to start creating comics, start writing? Kind of what's your origin story to give us a baseline for our conversation?
Oh, yeah. I mean, professionally, so I've done a bunch of writing, but most of the writing I've done has been in either video games, a little bit on TV and stuff like that. I didn't do any comics until my first comic was published just a year and a half ago. But I've been a comic fan since as long as I can remember, and probably more into comics than anything else. Like, that's always been my true love. I mean, I don't remember exactly what my first comic was. I read a lot of like DC and Marvel when I was a kid, but I do remember when I moved to my hometown, I was 6 years old, and there was this amazing comic shop there that had a lot of independent stuff. And so luckily by the stuff they stocked, I got really big into like Usagi Yojimbo, which was Fantagraphics at the time, Dark Horse Presents, lots of like weird kind of like indie stuff that was probably more mature than I should have been reading at the time. But I think, yeah, my origin was probably a healthy dose of like early Fantagraphics, early Dark Horse stuff, and then mixed in with the usual, early 90s Spider-Man and Superman, Batman, all that stuff.
I have this kind of debate with my my girlfriend all the time because her kids are getting that age.
Yeah.
And what's appropriate for them. And I'm like, man, my dad showed me Aliens.
Yeah, exactly.
When I was like 10 years old. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't think it hurt anything. So.
That's kind of my litmus test too. I remember with horror films and comics and stuff, because I've got a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I just think, okay, what age was I when I started watching stuff like Aliens, when I started reading stuff like Sin City, and I'm like, yeah, this is appropriate for this one, this is appropriate for this one, but we're not too precious about that stuff.
Yeah. It's always a fun conversation around the house because she had a different upbringing than I did, being a much more like Catholic, or
Oh, I can imagine.
Environment where mine was much more like my dad's like a hippie biker, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get into video games, which kind of my first love in life was always video games. Growing up, just huge gamer. Comics were always there and everything, but just loved coming home from school, not doing my homework, and playing as much Halo as I could, or whatever video game was out at the time. What kind of got you into that world?
I think, for me, like when I was a little kid, it was like NES, and even before that, like little kid, like Atari 2600. But it was just, we were lucky to have a system. Our friends down the road had systems, and I remember, especially when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, it was really common to rent games from Blockbuster. And so even though we didn't have that many games, over the course of a summer, you're trying out basically everything on Nintendo, Genesis, Super Nintendo. And so that kind of got me into, even though, again, I think I've always loved comics more than video games, that prepped me for having a career in video games, because I did most of my time directing at the studio where I work right now, Way Forward, and that's kind of the one through line that's a similarity of all the directors at the studio, is like they played everything on NES, everything on Genesis, and so little like playing all the traditional platformers, but all the like super obscure third-party games as well, and just playing Zeldas and Marios, but also, really interesting stuff. One of my favorite games was Flashback on Genesis and Super Nintendo that had like great level design. And then kind of as I got older, I started dabbling with pixel art, and that ended up kind of becoming the way that I got into the industry. As I initially started as an animator, even though most of my education is all writing based, but I came into the company as an animator, and then quickly kind of switched over and started doing more writing and design work and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been pretty consistent on video games. I think around maybe college, like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, I fell out of it for like a few years. But otherwise, yeah, I've been playing, since probably I was like 3 or 4 years old or so, I would imagine.
Yeah, I was trying to remember, because I have an easier time remembering all the comic stuff because I'm in it 24/7. But Way Forward was one of those companies that I always really enjoy because you guys basically take the old games that I might be a little bit too young to remember some of them, but like because they were in the house, I had them.
Yep.
And modernized them. So like I love River City Girls. And,
Oh, thanks.
and then even when I saw that Yars was coming out, Yars Rising years ago, I was like, oh my god, I can't believe somebody's bringing back Yars.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy one.
And that was cool. So that one actually, that kind of was what got me into comics. So my first published comic was Yars Rising #1. Basically, the situation was we were making the game for Atari. I designed it, and my friend James was directing it. And as we were doing the marketing with them, they had a budget, and they said, hey, why don't we do like a little webcomic thing? And I was already friendly with IDW, the publisher, because I'd done a children's book with them. And I said to Atari, like, well, instead of doing a webcomic, what if we did like an actual comic? Like, you know, for the same amount of money, we can do something. I can talk to them, see if they want to publish it. And they were down for it. And so, yeah, we've actually did a full-on prequel comic, like a 24-pager, that dovetails into the video game story. So if you play the video game, it stands on its own. But if you buy the IDW comic that came out like late 2024, it was like a prequel. It's like the two or 3 days right before the events of the game. And that was just so much fun to work on, because again, I've like, with, you mentioned River City Girls, we dabble a lot with like motion comics, like, you know, kind of the aesthetic of comics, even though it's in a video game. But that was the first one where it's like, oh, this is an actual comic that is in comic shops and we can hold, and it's, you know, 24 pages and everything. And so that was kind of my into transition. I still do video games for a living, but that was my transition into actually having some published comic book stuff as well.
Was there a lot of like pushback when you were saying like instead of web, like why don't we actually go to IDW, or did people kind of like jump at the idea when it came up?
I think they were pretty interested, yeah, because I mean they were basically gonna do something like that as a means of marketing the game, and so for me it was very much like, well, I don't know if it's, you know, gonna get more renown as like a comic book, like a floppy versus a webtoons. I don't know, like, you know, how many people read webtoons versus comics, but I just thought you're hitting a totally different audience if you're in a store and you know, it's distributed by Penguin and it's going through all the same channels and it's hitting all the comic stores and stuff. Like when it came out, I just went to my local store and they had a bunch of them in stock without even, you know, knowing that one of their customers worked on it. So there wasn't really any pushback. It was just kind of like, well, what are the logistics? And then I reached out to IDW and essentially said, hey, here, we've got this thing, the game's coming out, we're going to be marketing the game, so you get a lot of kind of cross marketing for free. And since Atari was doing it as a marketing expense, we didn't need IDW to fund it. So it was I think it was a pretty easy sell for them. It's like, hey, do you want to do this pickup for free, basically tied to this upcoming video game?
Did it ever lead to further conversations in the future of like other games coming out? Maybe we can do this with it.
I think
to help promote it.
Yeah, I think Atari liked it. So I mean, afterwards, we don't have anything we're working on right now, but we definitely talked about like, you know, do you guys want to do more with these characters? Do you want to do more comics with your other things? I think that's one of the things, you know, any comic book fan knows. That's one of like the strongest things about comics is you're establishing worlds and establishing stories for like a tiny fraction of what it costs to make video games or movies or TV shows. That's why, you know, like Marvel and DC Cinematic Universe, they basically treat comics like R&D. It's like, where do we get our stories? Where do we get our characters? So I think they were very, you know, interested in that. I'd love to do more stuff with them, you know, take some of their other brands and kind of reimagine it. Even if it's just a comic, if it doesn't actually become a video game, I think it'd be really cool. But we did have some conversations after that one came out, but nothing that's come of it since.
Nothing materialized really out of it.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, especially when you talk about the bigger games, like I always think of like Horizon Zero Dawn that came out years ago, and they put out those 2 comics that kind of bridge that to the new game.
Yeah.
And, you know, we spend like 40, 50 hours in this this world, and I fall in love with it, and then when it's over, it's like, oh, okay, I gotta wait however many years for the next one. Like,
Exactly,
why not
yeah.
do something in between to kind of keep us in that world and keep us engaged?
Yeah, and it's so, you can put stuff together very rapidly as well. Like nowadays, a typical video game is taking us like year and a half, 2 years, sometimes even longer from when we start talking about it to when it's released. Comics, you can turn them around in just a couple of months if it's just a one-shot issue.
Yeah, definitely. And so that brings you to the world of comics. Did that kind of give you the itch to do more after that, or did that feel like a one-off kind of thing, and then
it definitely, I definitely wanted to do more. I think if I could rewrite my life, I probably would have gotten into comics instead of games, because I'm way more passionate about comics. I like games, but even in video games, most of what I'm doing is very comic-like. I'm like writing stories. I'm like, for the cutscenes, literally doing like, paneled comic-style cutscenes and stuff like that. So, it definitely like scratched an itch, and then afterwards, I was just, once we had that thing out, I was relentlessly bugging IDW, like, let me do some more. Although that one, so Yars Rising was the first comic that I got published, and then the second one was the Monster Peace Theory, or Romeo and Juliet and Godzilla. Both of those, though, were actually started after my main comic, The 13 Demons Dead, which is coming out in August, because that one, it's 250 plus pages. So we were actually working on that for like over 3 years. So that one was in development long before either of the other ones. It's just the other ones, because they were single issues, got done and knocked out and shipped much more quickly.
Oh, okay. That's it's interesting to, like, even you said you can kind of push out a comic pretty quickly, but then in the other breath, like, it's taking you 3 years to get this other one. It's really like a weird back and forth in the industry. And
that was mostly just the size of it, because with that one, we initially pitched it as like 12 issues, and then they said, well, this thing looks kind of like manga style, and we think it would resonate more as like a volume 1. So we essentially just got a 12 months worth of comics greenlit by IDW on the 13 Demons Dead, but just as a thick volume. So that's why it took so long. Is just, I think my artist Saspy did about 2 pages a week, which sounds pretty fast, but when you add it up, it's like there's only 50 weeks a year. So you go through it, and with all thumbnails and planning and all that stuff, it takes about 3 years to do 250 pages at 2 pages a week.
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump next into Godzilla, because first, when it was announced that they were doing a Godzilla book that was crossing over with Romeo and Juliet, I had to know what was going on, because it's such a weird crossover. Where does this idea come from?
So the series is a spin-off of what Tom Scioli did, originally called Monster Peace Theater, where he took The Great Gatsby and then other like literary classics and melded them with Godzilla. IDW has been doing really crazy Godzilla spin-offs and series for a couple years now, and that got a lot of attention. And so at the time, I was already working on the Demons comic, but I was pitching my editor, Jake, hey, you're the Godzilla editor. Can I do this? Can I do this? And I was just throwing a bunch of random ideas his way. And one of the ideas I said is, what if we did Romeo and Juliet meet Godzilla, not really thinking that it would tie into Tom Scioli's series, because at that time it was like, well, only he does that. But then Jake said, well, that series was so popular that we wanted to do kind of an anthology with different creators. And so I had kind of pitched them just the idea of Romeo and Juliet as just a weirdo, Godzilla tie-in idea. But then he came back and said, this actually fits really well with an initiative that we want to do with other creators. And so it got folded into that. And so ours is, I don't know how many issues there are, but ours is the first one with Romeo and Juliet. And then the second one that's already announced is Homer's The Odyssey. That's the next one that comes out.
Yeah, and they're doing, aren't they doing Robin Hood as well?
Yeah. So that's the cool thing, is like, we're doing the main story on each one, and then Tom Scioli, the guy that it started with, is doing a Robin Hood story, but it's like broken into chunks. So in the back of each issue, you get like, I don't know what it is, 5 or 10 pages of his story, and then that continues with like the next issue in the anthology.
That's very cool. When you're going back and going through Romeo and Juliet, like how in your brain are you like, well, this is where we like just insert Godzilla and then Mecha Godzilla and all these different creatures.
Yeah, it was. We didn't really have a specific idea what we wanted to do at the beginning. If you read the first Monster Piece Theater with like The Great Gatsby, it goes really crazy and goes really off the rails and just gets like super creative. It's not as much like a kind of beat for beat storytelling like we did with this one. But as I reread the play, it's like it kind of dawned on me. It's like that's where all the power is. Like Romeo and Juliet, they're not very interesting characters. They're just kind of like very like emo teenagers that are like, oh, we're in love with somebody I just met. Like there's not that much depth there. Where it's all good is the plotting is great and then the dialogue is great. And so as I was going through, I kind of, because initially I would talk to my editor and it was like, should I write it in the same style of speech? And he was like, oh, I don't think you need to. You could just do like more casual, like normal dialogue. And so that was my plan. But then as soon as I started going through it, I'm like, I can't do that, because if you just do casual, then you can't reuse any of the existing dialogue, any of the existing lines, wherefore art thou, Romeo, and, you know, all of I am fortune's full, like all of that stuff that's so great. So we sort of just committed, and I wrote the whole thing just in the exact same writing style with the iambic pentameter and the rhyming and the stanzas, all that stuff, as much as I could, and then inserted around it. So we have structurally it goes through the same thing, but because Godzilla is around, because Mothra is around, it impacts how all that stuff happens and gets really crazy and wild. And yeah, it was really fun to kind of figure out, like, you know, keeping the main events, but then tweaking it, like, okay, they're both going to die at the end, Romeo and Juliet, but how do they die, and how does that situation get affected by Godzilla and affected by Mothra? And then, like you mentioned, there was the steampunk wooden Mechagodzilla, who we called Automatazilla. That was really fun to put in. It's piloted by Juliet's father, and Sean, the artist. It was really fun to work with him and just come up with what could a giant Mechagodzilla in the 15th century do. Like, obviously it's not going to be shooting lasers and energy beams, but it could be shooting like spears, and how would its arms work? It would have giant gears and you know, rotators and stuff like that. So I thought he did such an incredible job with it. Hopefully, I don't know how, but it'd be great to see that version of Mechagodzilla come back in something else.
Yeah, it's such a fun, like, almost Frankenstein-esque monster of a comic, because it really does take, like, as you're reading it, at least as I was reading it, I'm taken back to high school when you're reading Romeo and Juliet, because, you know, it's one of those important parts of literature, and you're remembering those important moments, but then just like this important moment happens, and Godzilla's in the background just ravaging everything. And it's such a fun time throughout it.
That was my favorite part of writing it, is just the absurdity of, like, they're getting stomped on and their whole Verona's getting destroyed, but they're still being whiny teenagers or 20-somethings, whatever, and, you know, being over-dramatic and stuff like that. I love, like, and again, it was fun to write in that dialogue. I love that, like, there's this one shot where two just random partygoers get blasted by a beam and they're, like, incinerated, and one of them says something like, how was it phrased? It was something like, would that I had stayed home tonight. So it was just like the hammy thing of, like, oh man, I should have stayed home, but writing it in that, like, eloquent Shakespeare thing was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a good time, everybody. You should definitely check it out. And then that kind of gets us to your next thing coming out later in the year. Is that also IDW?
Yeah, so far everything I've done for them, in comics, has been IDW. So the first thing, actually, the very first thing I did with them was back during the pandemic. I did a children's book, a horror book for kids. About, like, it started as a Kickstarter, and then when I had it done, I was looking for a publisher, and they liked it. And so it very similar to, like, anyone who grew up in the 80s that loved reading, like, scary stories to tell in the dark or Goosebumps or stuff like that. It's kind of in that vein. So I did that with them first. And that was back during the pandemic, like 2020 or so. And then everything I've done since then, Yars Rising, Godzilla, Romeo and Juliet, and then upcoming 13 Demons Dead is all with them. And then they're also taking the book that I just showed called Afraid of Everything. That's getting a paperback edition in August as well. So August is going to have two things coming out for me. It's going to be the new paperback of that with a brand new cover by the artist, and then the first volume of 13 Demons Dead.
Well, I'm guessing the original did well if you're getting a paperback.
You know, it was weird. It was like right at the very beginning of the pandemic, and it's like everyone's like, how do we just not die right now? And so it's kind of made me a bad time to launch any product. But I've definitely, I don't know the figures, but what I love doing is I would buy as we came out of the pandemic, I would buy a bunch of copies from IDW, and then I would table at conventions like Monster Palooza, and it got a lot of attention there. So that was really fun, like going and you see all these horror fans, especially horror parents with young kids walking around, and they're like, oh, like this is something for my kid that I can get. So I really love doing that, and definitely I'm hoping to do more horror conventions and comic conventions as the rest of this stuff comes out, and sell to the fans one-on-one.
How does that work with life as a video game creator? Like, do you have enough time to go out and do the conventions and kind of fly around?
I have a very considerate wife, and we're very good of watching the kids when the other one has stuff going on. But yeah, it's a hobby. So I mean, my video games are my 40+ hours a week. So if I do a convention, it's either on a weekend or maybe I'll use a vacation day or something. And then working on all this stuff, it's all after hours or weekends. So yeah, it's very, very slow, but yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's kind of nice also. I think a big part of why I got into this, especially starting with the children's book, is we started doing a lot of games that were more and more digital, and some of them just never had a box. It was like, oh, this is just an iPhone game, or this is just a download game, and it's like I can't even hold it anymore. And for me, like a big realization was I worked on a game in around 2014 called Till Morning's Light. It was a horror game. Came out on iPhone, and then a few years later got taken down, so it just doesn't exist anymore. You can't play it anymore. And I think that kind of gave me like a little bit of a crisis moment where I'm like, wow, this thing I spent like year and a half on doesn't exist anymore. And so I said, like, what's the opposite of that? It's like books and comics. It's like you can always have it. I mean, especially like I love, a few years ago I finally got a spinner rack, and I put like a bunch of issues on there that I grew up from. So it's like I wanted something tangible, and I think that more than anything, that's kind of what drove me wanting to do a little hobby on the side of stuff like comic books.
Yeah, and that's kind of been one of the conversations in the comics world, is mirroring what is happening to you guys in video games, where there's that conversation of going digital, and how that works and what we do with it. And that is one of the concerns. Like, yeah, digital can disappear one day.
Yeah.
We've been seeing it left and right in the video game world. So.
Oh, yeah. And especially, like, with the way that... I mean, I do love e-readers, and so I, even though I'll always go for the floppy issue, but I'll do a lot of e-reader stuff as well. But especially when you're buying through like a restricted marketplace, like a Kindle or the individual services of Marvel and DC and stuff like that, those are licenses. They're not just giving you a PDF file that you hold forever. Those are things that will, if there's suddenly a reason why an issue has to go away, they'll yank it. You can't have that issue anymore. So yeah, very much like video games. Any of these. Same thing with movies. Like, you think you own movies on, Fandango or Apple or wherever you're buying it. Not if the license goes away. If that thing goes away, there's the fine print that says, that thing goes away and you don't have any recourse. So, yeah, definitely I'm a big fan of physical. And I think one of the nice things, too, is with comics, it's more manageable. Like, I've got tons of DVDs and stuff here, but DVDs take up a lot of space, video games take up a lot of space. Comics, you can just have them all very nicely organized on a shelf, and you can have thousands of them, and it really doesn't take up that much space. And I don't know, it's kind of the perfect physical collectible, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as we kind of watch the video game and movie space go through their growing pains with all that, it gives comics a chance to stand back and be like, okay, so like, what they do wrong? What can we fix? What can we do better? Especially after we just went through the whole Comixology debacle,
right?
With it being very successful and being this thing, and then being bought out by Amazon, and now just gone.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there's also something to be said for, like, movies have been around for over 100 years, but home movies really started in the 80s on VHS, and really just like 20, 25 years ago on DVD, 30 years ago. So And then same thing with physical video games. They had a few of them in like the 70s, 80s, but it was really just in the 80s that you started having carts and stuff. Go back to comics, you were getting individual floppies in like the 20s and the 30s, like 100 years ago. So there's been so much more time for comics to like learn how things work and the best way to distribute and the best way to, you know, hold on to things. And also, I mean, that's why, again, it's such good R&D for whatever is the new Marvel movie, because they've got, you know, pushing 100 years on DC and Marvel characters. So in a way, it's interesting that, you know, I think a lot of the more digital physical brands like video games and movies and stuff like that, audio gets more attention, but comics were like, you know, there at the very beginning. I mean, people were, you know, my great grandfather was flipping through comics probably.
Yeah, I've been saying for a while now, I think comics just have a bad branding.
Yeah.
Right now, like when you talk to the normies out there, it's those Marvel DC stuff, like Batman and Spider-Man, and it's like, yeah, that stuff's great. I love that stuff. I read it all the time, but that's not everything.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
There's Godzilla fighting Romeo and Juliet out there, guys.
Exactly. And I think that
there's weird stuff.
Yeah, and some of it, I love also the stuff where it's just like creators cranking their stuff out. So again, like the comic I got into when I was like 6 or 7 years old was Usagi Yojimbo by Stan Sakai. 40 years after he started that thing, he's still doing it like every month or two. He's just cranking out, you know, 20, 22 pages himself, all the art, all the lettering, all the writing. And that's what's amazing is you look at some of these guys, like I'm a big fan of Evan Dorkin, who does like Milk and Cheese and Eltingville. He's been doing stuff for about 40 years. So you have these independent creators, and they just get to keep churning out what they're doing and building up that audience. And I love that. And I also love the fact that, you know, even if you love, you know, a particular movie director or video game director or anything like that, they're always working with this massive team. I love just the intimacy of comics that, you know, when I was doing 13 Demons Dead, it's like I wrote it, and then Saspy did the illustration, and that's it. And then after that, you know, we get a little bit of editing, a little bit of lettering, but it's like it's really a two-person book. And I think it's so rare that you have any art form that's like mass media storytelling that really can be done by like 1 or 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, I always think of Eric Larson, like who could be handed a blank check from any of these companies.
Yeah,
because people swarm to see him do something.
Yeah,
but all he wants to do is write and draw Savage Dragon.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he doesn't care if you hate his politics. He doesn't care if you think the story's stupid. Yeah. He's going to do what he wants to do. If that means Savage Dragon fighting a piece of wood, he'll fight a piece of wood. If that means Savage Dragon meeting Barack Obama, that's what's going to happen. Like, he does not care.
No, I love that.
I love that freedom. I love it.
Exactly. I love stuff like that. Like him, Stan Sakai, like previously was Cerebus, Dave Sim, like guys that are just like, I'm going to just do this thing for like 200, 300 issues and crank it out, and just unwavering. It's kind of interesting because you look at like all the different Image guys, they all said they were going to do the Eric Larson Savage Dragon thing, and then very quickly they started like handing off to other artists or spinning off to other stuff. He's the only one of the bunch. I mean, Todd McFarlane still has Spawn coming out, but he stopped being the solo creator, like 2 years in or something. Eric Larson, you're right, man. He's just still at it and just building up that world. And I think you're right. Like, I think a lot of people forget, you know, unless you were there in the 90s, McFarlane, as he transitioned away from Amazing Spider-Man and then started Spider-Man, Larson came in and picked up Spider-Man, and there's a lot of like keys from that era where it's Eric Larson. I think people don't associate, like, there's a lot of Venom stuff, a lot of Carnage stuff, a lot of things from like that era of comics that were this guy behind it. And I think you're right. I think just about any project out there. I saw he just did, what was it, one of the covers for, was it DC something, DC Superman or Superman Spider-Man or something. He did one of the covers.
Yeah.
But aside from that, yeah, he's doing his own thing, and God bless him, man.
Yeah, it's amazing that he just still is cranking those out all the time.
Yeah.
So back on track. So you got 13 Demons Dead.
Yeah.
That's kind of the big book that's coming out right now. What's this book all about? What are you trying to do with it?
So basically, I wanted to, because everything else I've done has been kind of like an adaptation. So with Yars Rising, it's based on the Atari game. With Godzilla, Romeo and Juliet, obviously it's just kind of putting those two, objects together. And then even with video games, like you mentioned, River City Girls, I created a spin on it, but it's still based off of like an existing River City Ransom brand. So this is the first thing where I created it just completely by myself, and it's just a mishmash of just what I like. And so I love horror, and I especially really love Hellblazer and John Constantine as a character. I love that he's just snarky. I love that he's fighting demons and monsters every issue. And I love, especially like in the last couple storylines of Hellblazer, the original series, were done by Peter Milligan. I loved reading those where it's like he'd fight a demon, but then the demon would kind of be friends with him, and they'd before they fought each other, they would trash talk each other a little bit or say, "Hey, how's it going, John?" And I love this idea of like this holy warfare, but at the same time it's just like, oh, like that freaking guy, I hate that guy. And so that's kind of what this book is. It's basically the gist is that there's been this secret holy war for over 2,000 years between heaven and hell, and there's 13 demons that are like loose on earth, and they're just like uncontrollable, and so there always has to be some sacred holy warrior to like fight them. And the rules of it are that like if the priest, who it usually is able to kill all 13 of them at one time, then the curse is broken, they're gone forever, they're cast back to hell. But otherwise, if any of the 13 remain, 12 months after they're killed, they resurrect, almost video game like. And so it's this cycle, and none of the priests that have been like the one true warrior have been able to kill them all at the same time over these 13 years, over these 2,000 years. And so what ends up happening in this book is a 14-year-old girl named Ev from Southern California accidentally takes on the curse, and now she's the new demon slayer. And so I love writing about teenage girls and 20-something girls, and just kind of the snarkiness and stuff like that. So the gist of it is kind of like, what if you had Hellblazer, but the chosen person, instead of this like grizzled 40-year-old cranky John Constantine, was a 14-year-old girl who has to deal with high school freshman year, has to deal with homework, has to deal with bullies. And so it's just all that stuff that I like together, where it's like silly high school kind of like drama, but at the same time real horror and like real grisly, gory, bloody stuff, and just mixed all that together. And luckily we pitched it to IDW, and they're like, yep, that sounds cool, and so they greenlit it. But it really is like, it's not it's not like PG rated. Like there's some pretty gnarly horror visuals and gory stuff throughout, contrasted with this very kind of sweet story about this teenage girl that's trying to keep her life together.
So when you say it's not PG rated, would you put it in the same vein as like your book you were talking about earlier of horror stories, where kids could appreciate it?
I mean, I would let my kids read this at any point. I would say this: it's not like there's no graphic sex or anything like that. There's just like bits of cussing, but it is very horror-y. So I mean, stuff like seeing creatures get sliced in half, seeing brains popping out of skulls, and characters that are like eviscerated through the face and their jaws are exploding. So it's very gory, but in the same way that like when I was a kid in the 80s watching House and Evil Dead and stuff like that, it's like that stuff. So I think if anybody, if their kids like are fine watching typical horror movies, not torture porn stuff, not like Saw type stuff, but stuff like Evil Dead, it's very much in the vein of that kind of stuff.
Okay. And then as somebody who's sort of a new creator, at least in our space, like how do you, with this new IP, how do you handle both trying to get out the best comic you want with a complete story, but also maybe thinking long term and thinking like this could be 200, 300 volumes of comics?
Yeah, it was really tricky, and especially since we initially pitched it as a monthly, because the other thing is every chapter advances by 1 month. And so the initial idea for the book was like, oh, you've got this cyclical thing where the demons come back 12 months later. We'll just start doing a series, and that way when you see them die 12 issues later, you see that demon come back. Makes a lot more sense with issues. And then we had to kind of change how that worked when we got to the single volume. So the single volume is like 12 plus an epilogue, so it's like 13 chapters. It still goes through that stuff, but yeah, we had to kind of rethink, the cadence and stuff like that. I think the biggest change is, I think if it had just been a series, we probably would have gone through the demon aspects for a longer, like a couple of years, like drawn it out and really played with them coming back and stuff like that. Once it's in a volume, we needed to kind of wrap things up in a satisfying way, because especially, if we do more volumes and we have plans for it, they're probably going to be shorter. We're probably not going to do 250 pages again, because it took us 3 years. I'm thinking that maybe like a volume 2 would be like 100 pages, and we already have like a plot for that, so hopefully we can do that. But it still takes a long time to do it. So that was the biggest thing, was like making sure that we had a story that really wraps up satisfying, so that if we even never do a sequel, people will read that and say, oh, I like that comic, like that was good to go, and it just doesn't leave them on like a cliffhanger forever. That said, I think we hit a good conclusion to this first story right at the end, and then there's about 3 pages at the end that start a cliffhanger and tease kind of what is to become in a really weird, kind of interesting way. So hopefully we threaded the needle well and people dig it. But yeah, basically you'll get a completely self-contained story. You'll love it. You see the character growth, and you see the conclusions, and Ev as a character gets much stronger and takes charge of her own life and all that stuff, and you get a satisfaction at the end of that. But then we did want to put a little hook at the very end, like literally the last like 2 or 3 pages, that make you think, oh, this is going in a different direction in the next volume.
Yeah, and that's got to be always tough as a writer too, for your stories, because you want to have those long tails, and oh, this thing that happened today, 2 years from now, somebody's going to blow their mind, but you also have to keep them going for 2 years. So I almost wonder if you going to this format might have helped the story a little bit more too, because now you have to condense it into that and really keep us and give us this big thing that you can build off of in the future.
I think it did. Yeah, and a lot of that was our editor, Jake, who, again, is like the Godzilla editor. He was the one that said, it's really got to stand on its own. Because my initial plan was like, here's Volume 1, here's Volume 2, here's Volume 3, and they really weren't kind of dealing with some of the demon stuff until Volume 3, Volume 4, and he said, like, you got to condense this, you've got to, like, have this thing stand on its own. And, yeah, it really, it was tough to get everything in, within, even though 250 pages is a lot, we have a lot of story in there and a lot of events and stuff. That's one of the things that I'm really proud of, is I'm not a fan of like going and buying some really thick volume, especially when it's not a collection but like an original book, and it's just like a lot of wordless panels and you crank through it in like an hour. I'm like, I didn't get my money's worth for that. So I was raised on, really dialogue-driven creators like Evan Dorkin and Kyle Baker and guys like that, and so there's a lot of dialogue in this, so it's definitely the kind of thing where every chapter is about 20 pages, you'll read it, and then that's like a good stopping point, but it'll take a while to get through the book, and that's something that we really wanted to do. We didn't want it to be like boring. There's a lot of good cool visuals and reveals and great page turn moments and stuff like that, but we did want something where it felt like really dense for the money. Like I said, it really bugs me if I buy a book by an artist I love and I've finished something that cost me $18 and it's like an hour later and I'm done with it. I don't think you're getting your money's worth at that point.
And you mentioned the word visual, so who are you working with in terms on the art side of this book?
Yeah, so I created the characters with Rem, who's the artist of Devil's Candy, and if anybody's played any of the River City Girls games, she does all the art for that. And so she was the initial creator, but she didn't have bandwidth to do the book. So we kind of looked around for another artist that would have sort of manga-ish style like hers. And we found this amazing artist named Saspy, who's from Italy, and she just she likes doing cute characters, but she also liked doing grisly horror stuff, and she just seemed like a really good fit. And the way that we actually got it finally greenlit with IDW is because we did materials and sketches and stuff, and they were kind of like, oh, it looks pretty good, we're still thinking about it. And I just said, we just got to show that we could do it. So Saspy and I did a 10-page story that's not in the final 250 pages. It was more like a prototype, and basically just did one encounter with a demon and showing an everyday life of Ev, and just did the whole just on our own, just did a 10-page story and submitted that. And then once they saw that, they said, oh, okay, this makes sense, we think you guys can pull the book off. But we were so fortunate to find her. And it's also the kind of thing where you look at her name's Saspy, Saspy. If you look on any social media or comics, you can see stuff by her. But if you look at the stuff she's done up to this point, it's good. But I feel like we got so lucky because you see her level up like crazy over the course of 13 Demons Dead. It's pretty good art at the beginning of the book, but she just gets so confident with the characters and so confident with I really gave her some grisly horror, really gnarly visual moments and stuff, and she just nails all that stuff. So I'm so happy that I get to work with her on this.
No, I love that. And you know it too, with especially artists on long runs.
Yeah,
you can see them just grow and build throughout the run. And sometimes all the iconic art that people remember are smack dab in the middle of that run.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
At their peak, and they're feeling the character, and they've been doing it for so long they can draw them blindfolded at that point.
Exactly.
So coming off of Godzilla with IDW and then doing this in a post-Diamond world, how has the reception been on the retailer side? How much blind calling retailers have you been doing and all that kind of stuff?
So it's interesting because this one is more like a traditional book as opposed to a comic. Hold on, I'm going to cough real quick. So when we did Romeo and Juliet, that one was tricky because we did the Yars Rising comic, but I didn't really help with marketing or anything like that. I was just working with Atari and IDW and kind of helping them put it together. With Romeo and Juliet, I did, helped with interviews, and I did local, comic shop signings and stuff like that. But it's crazy when you do a comic, it comes so quickly and vanishes so quickly because it's all about it's going to be in stores, coming out on this date. It has a final order cutoff date, so it's very much if you don't order it retailers by X date, whatever it is, a month out from being in the shops, that's it. Unless it gets another print, that's it. And then once it's in the stores, it was really great. Sean Peacock, the artist, and I, we figured that people were digging it because both of us went to our local shops on the day it came out, and we couldn't find it anywhere. Every shop we went to was sold out, and it was kind of a bummer. It's we wanted to get some more copies or do a signing, but it's but that's probably a good thing, right? The fact that you can't find it anywhere. And then people online were really enjoying it and stuff, so it was really fun. But then it goes by so fast. It only came out a month ago, and you kind of, I don't think you can find it in stores anymore. It's either it's now gone into the back issues, or it's been sold out and they're on to the next Godzilla, whatever's. So it goes so fast with issues versus with the book with 13 Demons Dead. There's no final order cutoff, so they'll just print them as they need them. Same thing with the children's book I did, and it's such a long tail. So part of the reason where I'm trying to do some press on it now, even though it doesn't come out until August, it's already up for pre-order everywhere. If you go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever, you can pre-order the book anywhere. And it's interesting. I think in a way I kind of like that better. That's a little bit closer to how it works in video games, is having a really long period of knowing everybody knows about it for months. You can get any video game a year later, it's still going to be in stock at online stores and stuff like that. So seems like the 13 Demons Dead, seems like the book is going to be more of that sort of a style of release. But it was really fun to do the Godzilla stuff because it came so fast, and then there was so much attention on it for 2 weeks or so, and there's a lot of oh, let's do this interview here, let's do this signing here, blah blah blah, and then it goes away really quick. So it's such a different beast from books.
Yeah, it's. I always feel for creators of the comic space because comics are so ephemeral. They just come and go, and every week I got a new one. So it's just And even with me, someone who loves it and eats it every day and just takes it in, it's still just like, all right, when's the next issue? When's the next issue?
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, especially like now having gone through just a few issues, you really have so much more of a greater appreciation for the people that are doing it regularly. Because, I mean, you know, like everybody, you always have like, oh, this is my favorite like X-Men series or whatever, and oh, it's got this amazing team on it, and then the team lasts for like 6 issues before the artist drops off, or there's a filler issue, or there's delay or stuff like that. But you look at some of them, and like the one that I thought did a fantastic job is I don't even know how she does it all, is Peach Momoko, who, you know, does all the covers and stuff. She does all these Marvel alternate covers. She actually did a cover for us. We got her to do a cover for one of our Contra video games a few years ago. But at the same time, Ultimate X-Men, she's writing it, drawing it every single month, all by herself for 24 issues straight without a break, and then finishes it, and then immediately moves on to the Psylocke series that she has going now. And I mean, that is crazy dedication. The fact that she's like cranking out a monthly book that she's writing and drawing, moves right on to the next mini series, and then on top of that, she's still like the uber star of like the alternate covers. I don't know how she finds time for all that.
That's a good point. We always bring up Dan Mora.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a huge fan of Dan Mora. He does like 18 to 24 issues a year.
Yeah.
Like, what? Where's the Dan Mora clone? Like,
Yeah,
it's gotta be
yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, or like I see a lot of stuff with like I mean, on the writing front, obviously, like half the comics are written by James Tynion or Jeff Lemire. I don't know how those guys do so much issues, but then yeah, like I see Daniel Warren Johnson everywhere. He'll be doing one series over here and a bunch of covers over here and stuff. Some of those guys are just workhorses.
Yeah, and some of it's just strike while iron's hot. Like,
Yeah, I think so.
you know,
Yeah,
you're popular now, you might not be popular tomorrow, unfortunately.
yeah.
So, and I don't blame anybody. Get that money. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think with what you're going through now with this book too, what I like is, and retailers might not like to hear this, but I think bookstores are becoming more and more important to our industry, because I see it with how kids in my life are going after these comics and manga. And it's, for instance, my girlfriend's kids, like, it's, to go to a comic shop is kind of a stretch.
Yeah.
But to go to a Barnes and Noble and pick up some comics is not a stretch.
Yeah.
So having that too, I think is going to be big for the book as a whole, just because you're going to get more people in the bookstore, and you're going to get more of a chance of a kid to go in there and do it in particular.
Yeah, I think especially the fact that the art style in the book is a little bit manga adjacent. It's kind of nice because it has 1 foot in Japanese art style, but then 1 foot in like a very Euro style because the artist is Italian. I think that might help it be a bit of a crossover with people that are, because manga is massive. Like my daughter's 13 and she just reads manga everything. My son is 16 and he reads mostly like Marvel and DC stuff. But I think manga books are helping American comics as well, because they're really helping to bring people in. And especially, you mentioned Barnes and Noble. I think they got in on that early. I think they're so smart. You go to most of their spots, and what do they have? Like the manga section, which is usually just one row over from the comic section. They create like this den where kids can basically just sit there and just rifle through the books for hours and hours, and it builds up such a readership. Like, you know, people will just buy book after book and, you know, spend an hour just going through all the later stuff. I'm hoping maybe, you know, when 13 Demons Dead comes out, maybe we can move it over by the manga stuff and get some of that attention, because I think, you know, stylistically it's a good fit there. But yeah, it's definitely that thing where it's like, you know, rising tide, you know, the saying, whatever the saying, like the helps all boats or whatever. I think that's something that, even though it's a specialization and it's tapping into a completely different style of production and everything with the individual mangaka illustrators and stuff like that, I think it's all helping American comics, because that's kind of like the gateway. The same way that, like, for me, my gateway into comics was like early Dark Horse and Fantagraphics and just like crazy, like barely in the comic book store kind of indie comics. I think a lot of people that are getting into that stuff now, and I think also, like, you're seeing like crossover series too. So you look at, like, you know, what's the biggest comic right now? It's got to be the Absolute Batman. It has a very manga style to it. Like, I think Zack Snyder and all the artists he worked with know exactly what they're doing on that. Like, hey, we want to do something that's going to appeal to where the readers are right now, and I'm so glad that it's paying off for them.
Yeah, it was the right book for the right time.
Yeah.
It definitely was. And I think what's great about that back and forth, too, is you're seeing, and I mean this in the most purest version of it, that old capitalist saying of, like, competition is good because it helps. And seeing DC and Marvel, and now even I'm seeing indie creators doing it and IDW doing it with those like compact editions.
Oh yeah,
and getting them in at a cheaper price and just allowing people to pick up the book and not to worry about the big extravagant things. Like, it's amazing. When your book comes out, when 13 Demons Dead comes out, is it going to be more of a traditional size graphic novel, or how are they handling the printing on that?
I should know this because I think it's listed on Amazon and stuff. So it's manga size. It's not like floppy size, but I think it is larger than the Pocket DC editions. I don't think it's quite that small, and it's probably also I would imagine that the printing is maybe a little bit better. I was just looking through. I bought Dark Knight Returns, but it's funny. Those books are like so amazing. It's like $9.99. You get like all of the best stories of all time. I was in a comic shop the other day. I'm like, oh man, they put Dark Knight there. I have like 3 or 4 editions of Dark Knight, but it's like, yeah, but I can get this little version for $9.99. Might as well. And I rebought it, and then I flipped through it. I forgot how much I love that story. I'm so happy that they're doing that stuff. I think that stuff, and especially most of the shops I go to, it's like they've got the lineup of the $9.99 little pocket editions right near the register. Hopefully that'll get a lot of people into stuff like Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen and like all of these Hush and all these incredible like storylines. So I think ours is slightly larger. It's definitely thicker than most of them, but I haven't seen the final print stuff. So far I've only seen the digital versions.
Yeah, I was looking up to see if on the Amazon page they had the dimensions. I'm not seeing it on a quick glance.
Yeah.
But that's great because, and especially how big it is, I didn't realize that your price is really good, too, for a big 250-page graphic novel at $17. That's a steal.
Exactly, yeah. Because what the individual floppies now are, basically $5? If we'd gone the floppy issue, it would be $60. So you're getting 17 for $17. You're getting $60 worth of comics.
And like you said, I love those compact editions because with the $10, I had the same thing. I bought Dark Knight Returns because it's the greatest comic ever made, and my retailer's like, "How many versions of that do you own?" I was like, "Probably like 5 or 6." But this is the one I'm just going to throw into a crowd and yell.
Exactly.
Like, just read this.
Yeah. No, it was funny. Like I had it like next to my bed, and then the other day, it was like 2 days ago, I just started flipping through it, and I went through the whole thing. I didn't read every word, but I looked at like every page. I'm like, I forgot how damn good this is. Did you know? I don't know if you ever heard this. Did you know that a tiny bit of the inking in Dark Knight Returns was by a pre-professional Todd McFarlane?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so he talked about it on some podcast or something, but basically I think it was it was either before he did pro work or right when he was starting to. But he was hanging out with one of his friends who was the inking assistant for Klaus Janson on Dark Knight, and apparently Klaus didn't ink everything. He would like have like backgrounds and stuff be done by his assistant. And so Todd was hanging out in a hotel with his buddy, and he's like, "Hey, help me ink some of these things." And so he talked about like inking Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns. Specifically, I think he said that he inked some of the pages on when Batman is dressed up as the old woman in the supermarket. And like because he talked about like, oh yeah, to ink like all these cans as they're flying into the air and stuff like that. But for me, that's like it blew my mind when I heard that a few months ago. I'm like, oh my god, it's like maybe the best comic of all time. And then now this other amazing creator had this tiny little stamp on it as well. I think that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and what I love about the compact like crave that we're going through right now, and just bringing the price down and everything, is it. I think too many creators get precious with I have this book and look at my nice hardcover, and it's nice. I have a ton of them back here. Don't get me wrong, but there's something special about I buy 13 Demons Dead, and it's this cheap paperback, and I read it and I love it, and then it's just, hey, you and my friend over here, and I hand it to them, and I don't care if it gets destroyed because
exactly,
it's not the big massive hardcover where with those, they're they're expensive, B, they're nice. Like, none of my friends are touching those. Like, no, those are mine. Like, you don't touch those.
It feels like there's less attention on those too. I don't know if it's kind of like traded off for the collector's edition, but and it gets confusing because they use the word absolute. But you remember when they were doing all the absolute DC editions? They're gorgeous. Like, they're, $75, $100, $150, like, super leather bound, crazy hardcovers of all that stuff. But it doesn't seem like that stuff seems as prominent now. I don't know. Maybe things are just shifting in the way of people wanting those little bite-sized digests.
Yeah, I think that, especially with how manga was just eating the comics industry's lunch, like, it just told everybody, cheaper price point, get them in.
Yeah.
Just don't be so precious with your IP.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think you're right. That's what it is. It was a preciousness, because it's like a lot of this stuff. It's like, all right, come on, this whatever this book is, this is now like a 30-year-old book. It's like, the fact that Watchmen never broke the $10 barrier until this. It's like, get that down, like, get people into this. Like, I mean, you have people like me and you that are like, knowing these things and buying these editions for their kids, but get the people that are just wandering around in a comic shop to randomly pick up some Alan Moore or Frank Miller.
And the people that are wandering around Walmart, and the people that are wandering around, any store.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I see them at Walmart, and I'm like, oh my God. I literally walked through Walmart one day, and I saw Daredevil Born Again, speaking of Frank Miller. The compact edition that Marvel did. Like, I bought it. I'm like, it's Born Again is in Walmart right now. Like, that's insane.
I know, it's crazy. And that was one of those ones where it's like, it would get collected every now and then, but that's not like collected every other day like a Dark Knight or a Watchmen. Like, if you didn't know about Born Again and stuff like that, you kind of don't know. I was surprised, like they have like a little edition of those. It's small on the page count, but they did Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison and Dave McKean. They did one that was also the Magnolia Gotham by Gaslight, the Batman Jack the Ripper thing. So they're doing some deep dives on that stuff, and it's really cool to see them bring those out, because again, like you said, it's like, Walmart and stuff like that, they're getting some really interesting territories.
Well, one I'm excited for, because I've gotten really into the softcover omnibuses, especially Image is doing. I love them, dude. Like 50 comics for like $50-$60.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, my son loves the Spawn ones. I love the 3-volume Invincible. Those things are great.
Yeah, the Invincible one, I had to get the nice like special hardcover one. But DC's doing Fables.
Oh, nice,
and
nice.
I read volume 1 of Fables, but I never got past it. They were like $20, $25 soft covers back then. Now it's going to be $10 for like 2 volumes.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, stuff like that, where especially stuff like that where it has such a long tail. I don't know if they've done it yet. They should do that with Hellblazer, because I have all the individual soft covers, but it's like up to like, what is it, like 30 volumes or something. Hellblazer would be great as like, little individual omnibuses with hundreds of pages. That's like perfect for that stuff.
Yeah, I think the next thing they need to do is figure out the spines of them, make them a little more appealing, because I think the black with the generic logo doesn't work as well. And if you said one of your kids does a lot of manga, they kind of do something a little bit special with the spine to make it like look nice on the shelf.
Exactly, I think
that's the next step for those.
Yeah.
But we went off on a tangent there.
Oh, no, yeah.
But, I could talk about that stuff all day. But yeah, so 13 Thieves Dead will be in kind of that more compact size.
Yeah.
And I know IDW just did one for Godzilla.
Yep.
That I saw in a Barnes & Noble, actually.
Oh, nice.
A few months back. And they did a really good job with them, too. So I know that their compact printer is really good.
Yeah, their quality, that was actually how I first got into them, is I was a big fan of Ashley Wood, and I would look at his books and I'd be like, damn, every time I see a book from IDW, especially the hardcovers, they're just really gorgeous print material. So literally I went to them and kind of got associated with them just because I'm like, you guys are doing it better than anybody at that point, especially. And I was really happy with the printing on my children's book. And the comics have been great. They did, I think there's like 5 different covers they did of Romeo and Juliet and Godzilla. So I had to track them all down because I wanted to do one CGC version of each one. So I bought like multiples, and I'm looking at the corners. I'm like, I got to get those 9.8s of everything I've ever worked on. Just sent those away a few days ago, so fingers crossed. But yeah, they do it good, man. Like they're and I'm on their emailing list just as a fan, and just seeing that like when they have a hit like Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees and stuff like that, that they'll then capitalize on that and say, okay, well, you guys like that, now we're going to do like a numbered autographed hardcover edition. Or they just did one for like collecting the original Monster Piece Theater that Tom Scioli did. So they're really on top of that stuff.
Yeah, they're doing a really good job. I think they had a little bit of a slip up years ago.
Yeah.
When they were doing their kind of Image-esque thing that they were trying to do with what was Earth Divers and a few other books.
I didn't even see those.
I just think they kind of just slipped with it and how they were handling everything. And I'm sure a lot of that was Diamond bankruptcy related too.
Right. Yeah.
I'll give them their credit there, but. Yeah, they've come back and done some really cool stuff.
They've got it. Well, especially they've got to be creative right now because they lost the Transformers and the G.I. Joe. Skybound got both of those, and so I think that's part of the reason why they are getting so wild with Godzilla and stuff like that, getting so inventive and thinking outside the box on stuff. And yeah, I mean, good on them for it.
Yeah, creating their own Godzilla universe, kind of redoing TMNT again.
Yeah.
Just all the stuff they're doing is really cool right now. I think they're a great publisher, and I'm glad they're sticking around.
Yeah, me too.
Any last words about 13 Demons Dead? Because I got one more thing before I let you go, but I want you to get your last kind of thoughts in about 13 Demons Dead.
Yeah, so I mean, just if anybody who's listening, if you like horror, if you like comedy, you want to support independent creators, check it out. It's just 13 Demons Dead is the book. If you search for it right now, you can get it on Amazon, you can get it on Barnes & Noble. It'll be everywhere in stores in August, and we'll probably do some signings and stuff around that time. But it really is true. Like, this book selling well will mean that me and Saspy get to do more of them. So, we're going to try and get the word out. Thank you so much for having me on and letting me talk to your viewers about this. But yeah, if this seems like the kind of stuff that you're interested in, go check it out. If you look at Amazon especially, they've got like a 10-page preview of it right now, so you can get kind of a sense of the art and everything. But yeah, no, we're really excited to get it out. We've been working on it for over 3 years, so we're anxious to see how people dig it.
Awesome. So, my last thing we got to talk about. You got to work on Teen Titans Go?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So tell me about your Teen Titans Go episodes. I want to see if I can remember them.
So it was interesting. We did a Batman game at the place I work, Way Forward. It was for Brave and the Bold on Nintendo Wii. And the idea with that game was like it's going to be a playable cartoon. So the way we animated it, the way that we did VO and story, it was all one-to-one with the cartoon. And so DC Animation really liked it. In fact, Sam Register, who was like the head of DC Animation, said, "Oh yeah, he really liked that because it was like very much an extension of what they did rather than a video game adaptation." So I'm always looking for side projects, so I just emailed Sam and I said, "Hey, can I write some TV for you guys?" Because we just did this game. The game had like 400 pages of script, and it's kind of like a cartoon. Could we do some of that? And he's like, "Oh yeah, let me hook you up." And so he introduced me to Michael Jelinek and Aaron Horvath, who were the showrunners of Teen Titans Go. Now they're the co-directors of the Mario movies, both of the Mario movies. So those guys are like through the stratosphere. But he hooked me up with them, and we brainstormed and talked about different possibilities, and then settled on some plots. And then I would write it, and then we would come back and we rewrite it and stuff. And it was really fun to work on. I didn't get to see any of the production. It was basically once I turned my script in, then you just wait like half a year, and then it's like, oh, it's on TV. But the two that I wrote, they're both from the second season. One of them was the one that reintroduces for the Teen Titans Go continuity Aqualad. It brings him back, and it's all about him flirting with Raven and Beast Boy getting jealous. And then the other one was I think it was the second time it happened, where Raven gets split into the 5 different personalities. Of like the angry one and the lazy one and stuff like that. So both of those were in the second season. Those are the ones I worked on. I'd love to work on some more, but unfortunately those are the only 2 TV things I've gotten to do so far.
That's one of those shows, man. I absolutely love it. And I remember I took one of my nephews to see it because he was just young enough. He was really into it, and the movie came out.
Yeah.
And I'll have that movie. That movie will be burned in my brain because when they went back to do all the origins, and they just like shove Batman's parents in the crime alley.
Yeah.
I'm the only one in the theater laughing because I'm the only like adult who's actually a comics person. Everybody else is like parents. They're just like, my kid wanted to see this, and I'm laughing hysterically.
Oh yeah, it's very snarky. Like a lot of people. I know a lot of people were down on Teen Titans, especially like slightly younger than us, where it's like they were the generation of Teen Titans. The cartoon is like, oh, I was 13 when that came out, but it's really funny. It's really clever. It's really snarky. I love how subversive it is and all that stuff, and that they would bring in characters like the Super Friends and the twins and stuff like that. That they would like bring in all this crazy DC lore into that. Talking about we did a Justice League game. It was the second game I directed on GBA. It focused on the Flash, and one of the episodes was, or one of the chapters of the game was in Gotham City, and we had you go past a theater, and we had the Zorro poster up, and it was blocked by like destroyed cars, so you had to go down an alley to like bypass to keep going through the thing. We did this tiny little like 3-pixel rose on the alley as you walked through, because in comics, Batman goes to a crime alley once a year and puts a rose down where his parents died.
Yes. No, I think that show too. Somebody explained it to me as, have you ever watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah, somebody explained to me Teen Titans Go is just that show for kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that fits it perfectly.
That makes sense.
I've got so many people to finally give it a chance. And like you said, so many people are like, well, I remember my Teen Titans growing up, and it's like it's different. And it's funny. Get over it.
Yeah, and both shows, they are the worst people in the world. They are the worst heroes in the world, and Always Sunny, they're the worst people in the world. But that's why it's funny.
Yeah, it's great stuff, and I absolutely love that show, and I love what you're doing over there with everything. And I got to give you a quick kudos, because you also were involved with an adaptation of one of my favorite games of all time, which was the Advance Wars 1 and 2.
Yes, yeah, I got to help with some of the dialogue on that.
Yeah, those original Game Boy Advance games, man, were some of my favorites. I absolutely love those games. I was so excited when they brought them back.
Yeah.
But you've been super generous with your time, so I'm not going to take up too much more talking about all that stuff. If people wanted to follow you, do you do a lot of social media? Where do you want to send people?
Not really. I mean, I pretty much at this point, I'm only on social media to like keep retweeting articles about Godzilla, Romeo and Juliet, and stuff like that. But if they search for my name, Adam Tierney, it's usually up as Adam Wright Stuff on social media. But yeah, it's just, you can always interact with me. With Way Forward, if you just look at Way Forward, WAYFORWARD, that's the place that I work for, and we're doing a lot of social media stuff about our games. We love doing conventions like LA Comic Con and Anime Expo, meeting up with the fans and stuff like that. So that's really cool to kind of interact with that stuff. And we're going to be doing some comic book stuff through Way Forward with River City Girls pretty soon too, like actual comic book stuff. So we'll be able to announce some stuff in that regard too. I'm getting to blend kind of the two worlds of my existence together.
You're just sitting back going, excellent.
Yes, yeah, it all comes together.
What's the next big thing for Way Forward? Do you guys have anything coming up?
It's a weird time. We're working on some games right now that are like some of the best games we've ever done, some of the best IPs we've ever done. But the problem with games is, when I started 20 years ago, we'd spend like 8 months on it. Now we're spending like 24 months on it. So everything is super secret. So we're kind of in this weird period where the only thing coming out from us this year so far is we ported our old GBA game Sigma Star Saga to modern consoles. Aside from that, we're very heads down working on stuff. I don't think anything comes out this year, or maybe it does later in the year, but it's some really big stuff. But unfortunately, we're like in a very secretive period. But yeah, if we do anything like conventions or stuff, we usually do some announcements and trailers as far as that. Maybe we'll have something that we can reveal toward the end of the year. Very
cool. And maybe next time I have you on, we can talk more about what has happened over that time. Some of those projects
Of course.
I talk about.
And dig into some of the games, like you mentioned Aliens. I worked on an Aliens game too, and so get some of those xenomorphs and stuff.
And everybody out there watching, listening, check out the show notes down below. I'll have links to, most importantly, Adam's website where you can get all the information about everything he's doing. I'll also put a link into the Amazon page so you can pre-order 13 Demons Dead. But more importantly, you can use that Amazon page to push in front of your retailer's face and be like, I really want this book. Can you get it for me? And and then he'll know what he's looking for. But different ways you can get it through that. And I'll try to find some of Adam's social media for you to check out as well, so you can see when he reposts different Godzilla posts.
Fan art and stuff. Yeah, they've been really cool. IDW's been putting up a lot of like sketches Sean did of like character design and stuff. It's been really cool, all the behind the scenes stuff that's come out. Very
cool. But best of luck with the launch of this. I think it sounds like a really fun, cool book. I think you're gonna have a great audience for it, and I hope you guys keep making them. I want you to get to that volume 100 or whatever your goal is for.
Yeah, maybe not the Eric Larson degree, but we'll get a few more out, hopefully. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us on. It's been fun to chat.